Miss Mary's singing a story. It's a good one about a dog and a cat made of fabric who eat each other and disappear. Douglas, who's a baby and scared of everything, is crying with his head in Miss Mary's lap. He doesn't want the dog and the cat to have disappeared, but that's just how the story ends. It's not supposed to be sad. Ralph loves Miss Mary's singing story time. It only happens at the very end of the last day of the week. The teachers save it up because they know it's the only reason anyone behaves, at all, on any of the other days. Miss Mary's voice goes way up high, and then the story is over, and he feels sad that it'll be another week before they get another. Everyone claps and says thank you, and she looks really happy. Ralph isn't happy though. He wishes Miss Mary could be their teacher all the time. School is so much worse when she isn't around. "Oh, that's so sweet, Ralph," Miss Mary says, looking right at him. "I would love to be your all-the-time teacher too, but I have to go to school for that first, so that I can make sure I'm teaching all of you the right things." Ralph says okay, but he feels funny. When the bell rings, he barely even says goodbye. He's first in line on the bus, and when it gets to his stop, he rushes down the driveway and forgets not to slam the door on his way into the mudroom. "No slamming!" his mom yells from another room, but he forgets again, and she's really mad when he runs into the kitchen. "Ralph, for heaven's sake, if you do that again, I'll send you to your room. Can you hear what someone else is thinking?" He practically shouts it because it's been trapped in his mouth the entire way home. "Can you... what?" "Like, if I think something really loud, can you hear it?" "No, of course not. I mean it though. If you slam doors like that again, you're in trouble." "Okay, because I think Miss Mary did it earlier." "Did what?" "Heard me thinking." He explains it all over again. "Well, that would be interesting," his mom says. She scoots him out of the way and opens the fridge. "But I think you probably just said it out loud and didn't know." Ralph doesn't think so, and he doesn't think she's really listening anyway. She barely notices when he leaves and goes up to his room. There's a bunch of math homework to do, but instead, he sits on his bed and looks out the window. A memory blinks on inside of his head, like a TV. A long time ago, he and Blake, his best friend, had tried to shout stuff to each other. It was really late, way after they were supposed to be in bed, and they took turns over and over, thinking things really loud, while the other person listened as hard as they could. It was just a funny game, but then, all of a sudden, they could actually hear each other. Ralph would shout something, and Blake would say it back exactly right. It was fun at first, but then Blake asked Ralph why he was afraid of Blake's dad, which Ralph had never told him before. And Ralph asked why Blake didn't like the dark, and Blake started to cry, and Ralph started to cry. And their thinking voices were way, way, way too loud. That's when his mom came in, and everything went back to normal. She told them it was a bad dream, but now, Ralph didn't think that was true. Now he's sure he was right. Miss Mary had definitely heard him thinking. Ralph has to stay home from school on Monday because he has to go to the doctor. His mom says he isn't sick though, that it's just a quote-unquote routine checkup. As long as it doesn't involve needles, he doesn't care. But she won't promise that there won't be. "I don't have to do the homework though," he tells her while they go down the stairs into the stinky hot subway. "Yes, you do," she says back, holding his hand too tight. She always thinks he's going to run off like he did once when he was little, but he's 9 now, and he wishes she would realize that. "No, because I wasn't there." "That doesn't matter." "Yes, it does." Ralph loves his mom so much, but she never listens, and she doesn't care about anything that matters. "When we get home, I've got your worksheets. It'll be a normal day. You'll just be with me." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, kiddo." She squeezes his hand, but he steps as far away as he can without letting go, so she knows how angry he is. The air in here smells like trash, and everyone stands too close to each other. There's a man a little ways away playing the drums, with white plastic buckets turned upside down. He's looking at everyone walking by because no one's giving him any money. "Do we have $1? He asks, anger temporarily forgotten. "Why?" Ralph points at the drummer, who's watching him now. His mom must see that they're being observed because she makes a face like she would really rather just get on the train. She lets go of his hand so she can dig around in her big purse. She gives him $2 and tells him to be careful and to come right back. Ralph jogs over to the drummer, who is playing faster and better because someone is about to come give him money. Ralph stands in front of the buckets and listens, tapping his feet and wiggling a little. The guy's pretty good, but Ralph thinks he probably wouldn't be famous or anything if he wasn't homeless. He drops the money into the little plastic bowl in front of the buckets, and the man gives him a big smile. Ralph feels a little grossed out because the man has only a couple teeth left, like he does a lot of drugs. Ralph sort of feels like taking the money right back out, but instead he just smiles and steps back. Fucking cheap cunt. The thought slams into him like the baseball he took to the back of his helmet last year. He almost falls over, and he can't help it. Big, fat baby tears start rolling out of his eyes. His mom hurries over. "You okay?" she asks, fussing over him. Ralph has never sworn in his life. He's thought a few to himself, but never anything serious. But that thought, it felt mean, nasty. Too big for him to see all the way around. Something about her clothes, and his hair being combed, and the way she's watching him. Ralph swipes his cheeks and nods. "Can we please give him more?" His mom looks uncomfortable, but Ralph knows the man will be watching, and he's going to thank her so that she'll have to talk to him. Then he can tell her the story about losing his apartment, and she'll feel bad and have to give him more. Ralph guesses that she knows that too because she sighs and gets out more money. Ralph puts it in the plastic bowl. The guy smiles, but the weird thing doesn't happen again. And now, there's a big whoosh of trash-smelling air as their train arrives at the platform, hissing as it stops, so there's no time to think about it anymore. Everyone pushes and shoves and gets on and off the train, and when they're finally sitting down, he's hot and sweaty and achy all over. His mom cups his forehead. Her hand is cool and dry, and he leans into it. "You're warm," she says in a worried voice. "Good thing we're going to the doctor, I guess. Best place to be if you're sick." He nods and slides down so he can rest his head in her lap. She pets him, and he sleeps a little. His thoughts slide around independently of his mind. Weird little movies fade in and out. A girl needing a ball of something red-colored. A man hanging up a coat. A fist hitting someone's stomach, the bruising spreading out like a shockwave. A woman squeezing her head between her hands. A hand gripping a wrist. A team of doctors staring down at a patient. Pills on a table. Voices in an empty room. Sunlight blazing through a car window. The movies become shorter, faster, and they're about to turn into nightmares. But the train lurches, and he comes awake. "Oof, Ralph, stop," his mom says. "Time to wake up." "Okay, Mom," he replies, feeling a little woozy. The doctor's office is full of kids way younger than he is. They run around touching everything, not using their inside voices. One little boy with long hair, like a girl, keeps running up and slapping the rubbery chair seat next to Ralph. He does it over and over, and he gets a little closer every time. He wants Ralph to tell him to stop, so Ralph ignores him until he cries and gives up. The nurse calls his name and he shuffles back, obediently holding his mom's hand. Normally he likes the doctor. He's tall and has a thick comic book mustache. Eugene, and Ralph is allowed to call him that. He makes jokes and tries to get Ralph to laugh, but it just makes him irritated. He wants to go home and go back to bed. "He's quiet today," the doctor says, putting his cold metal dial with headphones to Ralph's bare chest. "He had a little moment on the way here. It was strange. It looked like he was going to faint." "Yeah, he is a little warm. Something's been going on around here the last week or so he might have picked that up." "Is that what everyone's here for? It's packed today." "Yeah, it's doing the rounds. Lots of fevers, kids having weird dreams, dizzy spells." "So, exactly what Ralph has." "Yep, absolutely. The antibiotics will help. Sound good, buddy?" Ralph's only been half listening. Something interesting is happening. The doctor is speaking, but there's a second voice running under it. It's like his out-loud voice, but smoother and deeper, and instead of hearing it with his ears, Ralph can hear it with his head. He tries thinking something back. The doctor blinks and scratches his neck. "That sounds fine," Ralph's mom answers. She's irritated that he didn't say it himself. She's wondering if he's really sick, or if he just wanted to stay home and is putting on a show. "I'm not faking," Ralph tells her. She gives him a funny look. What? Nah, you can't fake a fever, buddy, the doctor says. His inside voice says, maybe I'll see if Whole Foods has their pizza on sale. I don't want to cook. I like pizza too, Ralph thinks, sending the thought out at the doctor's back as he bends over his keyboard. Yeah, pizza's good, but it's not too healthy, so you shouldn't eat it until you feel better. Excuse me? His mom says. Ralph's heart is hammering. Quickly, before the doctor turns back around, he thinks, do I have to go to school tomorrow? Probably, but only if you feel good. Don't fake it, though. Moms can tell when you're lying. Are you talking to us? Ralph's mom asks. She can't hear him, but the doctor can. Ralph leaps out of his chair. See? He shouts. He can hear me. Sorry? The doctor's confused. He doesn't get it. I said that to you in my head, and you heard it. See, I told you. The grown-ups stare at him like he's just grown 2 extra heads. His mouth can't keep up, and the words he needs to explain all of this are floating just out of reach. He can almost see them, floating in purple-black space. Oh, Ralph, don't do that. He's talking about telepathy. He thinks his teacher read his mind. The doctor looks at them, and Ralph can't tell what he's thinking anymore, but just like before, he's been left with some pictures and more big feelings. Something about kids with smelly clothes and people in fancy clothes sitting at a big long table, and an angry lady throwing a Christmas tree onto the grass. Funny, you're not the first person to mention that. What is it? Oh, it's some viral thing. My daughter's into TikTok. People are saying they can read minds if they just focus enough. Wow, wouldn't that be nice? His mom says. They both laugh. Ralph doesn't know why or when, but grown-ups stop believing in anything when they stop being kids. Ralph thinks the doctors know he didn't speak out loud, but he won't admit it, and Ralph feels even worse than before. So, he doesn't bother arguing. In fact, he barely remembers leaving or walking all the way to the train station. He's just suddenly there, and his mom is tugging him closer to her side. A short, fat lady in a fuzzy pink coat shoves past. She's yelling at someone on her phone. Okay, his mom says, which is what she says when something irritates her. Is it National Be Stupid Day? Huh? Drives me nuts. Someone else knocks into him, rattling his teeth. The voices in the subway are never really happy, but today, they are downright angry. When he looks around, he can't find a single smile, and for some reason, it really scares him. Can I go back to bed when we get home? That's fine. Can I watch cartoons? If you're really not feeling good. I'm not. We'll see. He's glad that she doesn't tell him to stop when he climbs in her lap on the train, even though he's too big to be doing it. Blake is back at school the next day, and Ralph can barely wait to talk to him at lunch. Blake's parents own a ranch in Montana, and they take a lot of vacations. As soon as the bell rings for lunch A, he jumps out of his chair and runs at full speed to the cafeteria, ignoring all the teachers yelling at him to slow down and stop running in the halls. All Blake wants to do is talk about his stupid horses and the cowboys that work there. But Ralph tells him to shut up for a second, and Blake gets so mad that he gets all teared up. Don't tell me to shut up, I'll just go talk to someone else. Miss Mary read my mind on Friday, Ralph says, ignoring him. Really? Blake's tears are already gone, and Ralph wants to roll his eyes at the whole thing. How do you know? Ralph tells his best friend all about the thing with Miss Mary and the drummer, and he's about to get to the good part with the doctor, when the fire alarm above the oversized wall clock suddenly starts shrieking. The teachers all get up at the same time looking confused. Kids start to pack up and walk out in no real hurry, and Ralph is about to do the same, but Blake points towards the kitchen, his eyes big. Look at Big Bertha, he says. Big Bertha is everyone's favorite lunch lady. They don't call her that to be mean, but because it's true. She is the biggest lady Ralph has ever seen. She's so big that her belly hangs near her knees, and her boobs sometimes dip into the food if she leans over too far. No one minds though, because she gives you more food than anyone else. And if you're skinny like Ralph, she will even give you doubles. Big Bertha is always smiling and singing to herself, and rubbing lotion into her elbows, and fixing kids' clothes. She never really seems to stand still, but she is right now. And even stranger, she's standing on top of the table where they keep all the food in hot dishes. Ralph can't even imagine how she got up there with all that weight. She's holding something way up high to one of the smoke detectors. It's a bunch of lunch menus rolled up, and they're on fire. Her hand is burning too. Ralph can't stop looking at it. "Go home!" she screams. Most of the kids have seen her by now, but the ones that haven't are turning around, gaping. A few of the girls start to scream. "What's she doing?" Blake whispers, holding onto Ralph's arm. "I don't know." "I said go home!" Bertha says again. Even this far away, Ralph can see her hand melting away. Yellow stuff is dripping onto the floor. "Go home! Get out!" No one moves. Maybe because it's too interesting, or because they're as scared as Ralph is. The teachers are moving closer slowly, like they're afraid Big Bertha might try to light them on fire too. "Pam?" One of the teachers, maybe math or history, Ralph doesn't recognize him, says to Big Bertha. That must be her real name. "God damn you, get down! Go! Get the hell out!" Big Bertha, or Pam, is sobbing. Her hand is black now. Ralph is trying not to, but he thinks he can smell it. Like when his dad makes chicken outside, and pieces fall into the coals. "What the hell are you doing? You're scaring everyone! The goddamn fire alarm's going off!" That's a funny thing to say, since the teacher has to just shout just to be heard over it. Now the teachers all join in and try to get Big Bertha to come down. The papers are almost gone, and Big Bertha's hand is one big ball of black and red. She looks terrified. Without thinking, Ralph throws his mind out to her. "What's wrong with you?" The answer comes roaring back, but it's not words or even a noise. It's a wall of dread and terror. One day, Ralph rode his bike into an unfamiliar neighborhood, and a huge, muscular dog had chased him for nearly a mile, howling and barking, teeth snapping and frothy drool splattering the road. Ralph has had his run-ins with unfriendly dogs, but this wasn't a mean dog that wanted to be left alone. This dog wanted to kill him, make him go away forever. He'd pedaled as fast as he could, flying across intersections, imagining being bitten so clearly that he'd actually felt the pain of ghost teeth ripping into his leg. It gave him the speed to finally lose the horrible dog for good. But this, whatever it isn't a dog. It's not like anything he can run from because it's not here yet. Whatever it is, it's building up, like a spring getting wound up really tight. There. If he focuses, he can feel it, like the way the air gets tingly before a storm, but in his head instead of his skin. Something is coming, and it's almost here. One of the teachers is right beside her now, and lightning fast, he yanks her down. She lands on top of him, and the floor shakes, which makes some of the meaner kids who don't care about her hand laugh and crack jokes. The horrible feeling is going away, and Ralph finally notices that Blake is talking to him. "Do you think they'll have to cut it off?" Blake is asking, staring at Big Bertha's hand. She's holding it straight up as the other teachers walk her past the kids, who are crying and staring and whispering. Ralph doesn't answer. Her hand feels like a very small problem to him now. All week, there are counselors in the gym to talk to kids who saw what happened to Big Bertha, but none of the teachers will say why she did it or how she is now. Ralph watches all of it through a haze. He hasn't been sleeping because all he has are nightmares made up of more pictures that he can't understand. He flunks a math test and yells at his mom. He goes to school, comes home, and goes right to sleep. It's better in the daytime. And then it's Friday. Ralph accidentally sleeps through first period without being detected, and dozes through second. At the end of the day, Miss Mary sings the story, and they ask to touch her braid, and she says, no, it's rude to ask a woman something like that. Ralph thinks a thought at her, and maybe she makes a face, but she doesn't say anything back. His mom picks him up from school, and instinctively, he heads for the subway, but she stops him. "Not today. I'm getting a taxi." "Why?" "Oh, the train's just too noisy," his mom says. "I can barely hear myself think." Ralph is having a dream about legs. A sea of legs and clothing of all styles, packed onto the subway platform. He's small again, and no matter how far he cranes his head, he can't see what the legs are attached to. The train is coming, but it's not the one that should be arriving. It will be here soon, and Ralph is afraid. He wants to hide behind the legs next to him, which are wearing his mom's favorite jeans. Now he can hear the wheels on the track screeching as the brakes kick in. The car is hurtling toward the station through the dark, swampy subway tunnel, gaping open like an eye. Suddenly, Ralph is on the tracks, and at the same time, he's above them. He's fallen off the platform, and a third rail is electrocuting him. He's paralyzed, overcome with a shot at the dentist numbness, but it's in his entire body. No matter how hard he fights, he can't move. The eye of the tunnel fills his vision as if he's pulling him in. Somewhere, deep in the darkness, a pinpoint light flashes. The train is almost here. The light flashes again, and it's closer. And it isn't a train. The wheels are screaming on the rails and he slams his eyes shut, but it's no use. He can still see the eye of the tunnel and the flashing light, which is growing bigger and bigger as the screaming grows louder. The darkness at the mouth of the tunnel shifts, bows outward, and the not train is here. The screaming fills his ears and knocks out any thoughts at all. Ralph shrieks and slams his hands over his ears, but nothing makes it better. He calls for his mom, but he can't even hear his own voice. Stumbling out of bed, he knocks into the dresser and registers something breaking from the vibration on the floor. "Mom!" he hollers, forcing his hand away from his ear long enough to grip the doorknob. It seems impossible, but the screaming gets even louder, and Ralph drops to the floor in agony. He crawls the rest of the way to his mom's bedroom on his hands and knees, no longer bothering to cover his ears. His mom is there. She's on the floor, holding her head, and her mouth is wide open, showing all of her teeth. He reaches for her, and she grabs him and hugs him as tight as she can. The scream doesn't waver out or fade. It just stops, after a long, long time. His mom is crying and turning his head from side to side, touching him all over. "Oh my God, we have to get outside. Oh my God." She keeps sniffing and saying, "Oh my God," over and over. It takes them a long time because his legs don't want to work. They go through the kitchen to the front door, and Ralph smells something burning, but his mom doesn't stop. She tells him to walk slowly, stay close. Can you hear from both ears? Do they hurt? Am I bleeding too? And a million other questions. And she doesn't seem to care that he doesn't answer any of them. The old-fashioned metal indicator above the elevator says it's on the top floor, and even though his mom presses the button over and over, it doesn't move. "Stairs! Just take the stairs," she says, tugging him toward the door. Before she can open it, it bursts open. A man with Einstein hair and a jacket with elbow patches almost runs into her. It's their neighbor from 3 doors down. He helps Ralph's mom with groceries sometimes, and once, he came over and fixed her toilet after it won't stop flushing. He's always smiling even though he looks tired, but today, he's anything but happy. Ralph's mom says sorry and steps back, but their neighbor gets right in their face again. "Jesus Christ, get out of the way!" he says. Spit flies out of his mouth, and his mom flinches when it hits her in the face. He shoves past and shoots Ralph a nasty look. His ears are bleeding. "Come on, we're going," Ralph's mom says, wiping her face with the sleeve of her blue bathrobe, which is the only thing she's wearing. For some reason, that's scarier than anything, because his mom isn't the kind of person who won't even take out the trash without making sure she looks good. Right now, she barely looks any different than the homeless people that Ralph sees riding the subway day after day. He should also be embarrassed about his own pajamas, which have SpongeBob all over them and are way too small. But he forgets all about it when they go through the door to the lobby and see all of the people there. It's like every single person living in the building has come downstairs for a weird pajama party. "Ruth!" a woman calls his mom's name. It's their across-the-hall neighbor, Janine. She lives alone with 2 big white poodles and plays the violin. "Oh my goodness, you heard it too! Did everyone?" "I think so. Was it an alarm?" "No," Ralph says, but no one's paying him any attention. He wishes they would, though, because he doesn't think whatever it was is over. He thinks the scream was just a big puff of air that comes before the train pops out of the tunnel, and he thinks that they shouldn't be here when it pulls up to the platform. He tugs his mom's shirt sleeve. "I have no idea. They're calling the officer manager now, apparently. God, my ears. Oh, Janine, you're bleeding." Everyone is speaking loudly to be heard. The lobby is full, but the noise belongs in a crowd at least twice as big. People are waving their hands around with their eyes popped out, and in one corner, it seems like a fight might happen between 2 big guys. Then, His eyes are drawn to a face he recognizes. The toddler staring at him from across the room that lives a few doors down. And he likes to run up and down the hallways in the afternoons. Right now, though, he is standing completely still and watching Ralph with big eyes. Go bye-bye? The voice is little and clear, and Ralph feels his body tense up, as if he can prepare for what's about to happen, as if any of them can. The crowd starts to get louder, and then a little louder, and suddenly, everyone's shouting at each other, screaming in each other's ears, and his mom is looking around saying, "What's happening?" Janine is staring off at nothing with her eyes all big, like a dog that hears a whistle, and the big guys in the corner start to throw punches, bellowing with their mouths wide open. They knock into the people around them, and those people start fighting each other. His mom is holding his arm and pulling him back toward the stairs. Janine is crying and holding her head. "What's happening?" she whimpers. "Fuck you," someone else yells. "Shut up! Shut the fuck up! Shut up!" Once Ralph lets some of it in, the rest comes crashing through. He learned in science class that if we could hear the energy the sun puts out, it would sound like millions of atom bombs going off. What he's hearing now is even louder than that. It's voices. Not just hundreds or thousands, but millions of them, all overlapping and shouting and sobbing. He drops to his knees and grabs his head, and all around him, people are using both their voices to scream and scream. "Ralph!" his mom yells. Her eyes are all red and bugged out, like someone squeezing her really tight. Then, it's just screaming. No more words. Ralph remembers a story he heard a long time ago. What would happen to an ant if you picked it up and, for just a second, made it as smart as a person, and then made it stupid like an ant again? Would it just sit there until it died? Or would it go crazy? He is perceiving himself from hundreds of viewpoints. He knows the word perceive and is simultaneously learning its meaning for the first time. The noise is still unbearable, but the pressure in his head starts to even out, and he can let go of his head enough to look around. Every person he sees opens up in his mind like a book, and he's the world's fastest speed reader. He gains lifetimes of knowledge in seconds, and he can almost hear something inside of him snap. The person he used to be, maybe. He finds his place in the world through the eyes of his neighbors and strangers, and internalizes his insignificance in an eye blink. His mind is eating itself and trying to turn inside out. It's the hardest thing he's ever done, but Ralph manages to stand up. He closes his eyes and focuses as hard as he can, and if he tries really hard, he can make the cacophony just a little more bearable, like closing a stuck pipe one tiny turn at a time. He breathes, ignores the chaos, and when he opens his eyes again, the lobby is significantly less crowded. He reaches for his mom, but she isn't there. His heart lurches. With the mental noise at a mostly comfortable level, Ralph can finally see what's happening. People are tearing each other apart. People he's seen every day since he was born are dying in big splashes of color that he didn't know human beings had inside of them. A woman digs her hands into the chest of another person and wrenches the ribs apart. A tall, skinny man Ralph recognizes as being one of the front desk people has his hands on either side of a little boy's head. The boy is screaming and howling, and his face is turning purple. His eyes and tongue pop out like a squeeze toy. Then, a crunch, and the noise in the back of Ralph's head gets just a fraction quieter. Fists thud against bone, and heels stomp tissue into pulp. His mom. Where's his mom? Without stopping to think about the danger, Ralph ducks between the scenes of violence until he catches a flash of his mom's blue bathrobe. "Mom!" he screams inside and out. "Mom!" She's crouched on the floor, her eyes deep red and filmed in watery blood. In her hands is what's left of the toddler Ralph saw earlier. She's smashing him into the tile over and over. Ralph casts his mind out and gets a quiet in return that's too still and deep for it to ever be touched again. Ralph understands that he's lost his mom, even though she's right there, and he moves on with little emotion. He feels like that will come later, and he'll be lucky if he comes out of this any better than her. Ralph sticks close to the walls and makes his way to the big revolving doors and out onto the street. If it was hell inside, this is certainly some deeper circle. All around him, the city is dying in a million different ways. People fall from skyscrapers like rain, as those on the ground fight for survival. A man tries to get into his car across the street, but another man drags him out of it and drives away with the door open, plowing through a group of teenagers that are pummeling each other. It's taking him more and more effort to keep the wall of sound away. All of the inner voices are reverberating in the dome of the city and turning into a kind of feedback that demands constant adjustment of his internal speakers. That's why it takes him a long time to realize that someone is actually calling his name. He whips his head around as a bus barrels past, with fire coming out of the windows. Glass explodes in big coughs from somewhere nearby, accompanied by hollow booms that shake the pavement. "Ralph!" the woman calls. It's such a bizarre thing to see that he almost thinks he's totally lost it like everyone else. On a moped across the street is Miss Mary. She's wearing her nun clothes and waving at him frantically. "Hurry! Come on!" Ralph looks both ways and sprints to her. He throws his arms around her waist with no embarrassment, and she cranks the handlebar. The engine revs and the moped takes off, past the people shutting each other off in any way they can think of. The last thing he sees before he buries his head in her back and turns off himself is a pile of bodies being set on fire. As the flames catch, some of them begin to scream. The ride goes on and on. Even if Ralph can close his eyes, he can't close his ears. He hears everything, smells everything. The moped flies along the streets, but not fast enough to escape the anguished cries of the injured and dying. The hollow boom of explosions, both close and distant. The crack of bodies hitting the pavement at high speed. Somewhere along the way, a group of men spot Miss Mary and chase them for nearly a mile. Ralph thinks probably on their own bikes. They tell Miss Mary horrible things they want to do to her, and Ralph feels sick when he gets a taste of their excitement in his mental ear. "Please go faster," he begs Miss Mary. The moped jumps a little as she picks up speed, and she doesn't stop until the only thing they hear is the roar of the wind. When she does pull over, Ralph opens his blurry eyes to see a dirt road and big green trees looming overhead. The sun is starting to come up. Miss Mary pulls a phone out of her pocket and taps on it. "You're allowed to have that?" Ralph blurts. It's good to know he's still capable of being surprised. Miss Mary smiles at him. "Yes, they let us have phones." She sits down on the ground, and Ralph does too. He watches her scroll past video after video until she finds one that looks official. "We should listen," she says, but he thinks she's probably asking, so he'll tell her it's okay. At some point while they're running away, the mental wall of sound receded, and now he can't hear anything at all. It's just a hunch. "Okay," he says. The image of his mom comes back all at once, and he starts to cry. Miss Mary pulls him onto her lap, and even though he's too big for that, she plays the video. They listen while the forest wakes up around them, and out here, everything is normal. Out here, it's just another day, except for the nun and the little boy crying together. This is a public service announcement from the United States government. This is not a test. Please pay attention to the following instructions. If you are able to safely enter a state of unconsciousness, please do so. All emergency services in the lower Manhattan area are currently suspended. Take shelter immediately. All young children should be sedated for their own safety. Do not attempt to leave the city. A quarantine is now in effect. Please stay tuned for more information from an official representative. Good evening. At 4:14 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a series of riots began to occur in lower Manhattan. All residents living within the city limits have been advised to shelter in place. There have been outbreaks of extreme violence, and police and emergency services are unable to assist those in the most affected areas. While we do not currently have any information for public release, the CDC and Homeland Security are currently investigating to determine a cause for the outbreaks. I am using the term outbreak per the instructions of my advisor at the CDC. Until more information is available, the public should remain vigilant for similar outbreaks of violence in other areas. This message will be updated by myself or another official at a later date. God bless our country. God bless the United States.